your thoughts on his career and maybe his Leafs career so far, because I know you're not his biggest fan.
No, and I think, look, I said it at the top of at the show. He's got 1,000 points, or he's gonna get 1,000 points, right?
998.
Yeah, well, we can assume he's gonna get to 1,000 either this week or next week or something, right? Um, the most what the nine. He's one of those guys where he's got great numbers, but there are a lot of hollow numbers, Albert. When I look at John Tavares and I
Got to
look at
explain
his,
that. Got to
sorry,
explain that. You got to explain that
I'm
one.
about to
Hollow
explain it
numbers.
right now. I'm about to explain it right now. When you look at this guy, when he came in to the NHL. Remember, he had that great World Junior Tournament in Ottawa, right? He was, had exceptional status in the OHL, racked up a whole lot of points with the Oshawa Generals. He was, the clear-cut number one pick. He's kind of, I wouldn't say he was like on McDavid or Bedard level, but he was fairly close to that when he was coming into the NHL, right? He was expected to be the savior of the New York Islanders, bring them back to relevance. They went to the playoffs 3 times in his tenure with them, right? They made it past the first round once, right? When I look at John Tavares and when I look at when, he came into the league and the expectations, and even when he came to Toronto, right? He was the hottest free agent in the NHL. He could have gone to San Jose, could have had his pick of the choice. He picked the Toronto Maple Leafs. He picked the added pressure of coming home to play for his boyhood team, the team that he rocked the pajamas to sleep with and all that disgusting stuff. Anyway, when I look at John Tavares and his career, yes, he's got the numbers. Yes, he's, played for Team Canada at high stake events. Yes, he was the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, he was the captain of the New York Islanders, Albert. But what impact has he had in the NHL, right? What was his biggest impact? When you think of John Tavares' career, right? His career, what was his shining moment, right? What was the moment where you're like, this guy right here is one of the best players in the league. This guy right here is worth the big money contract he got. This guy right here is, as the kids say, him, right? We talked about how, I don't think he should be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs anymore last week, right? But when I look at John Tavares and I look at his career, and he'll be in the Hall of Fame because numbers and all of that. But what lasting impact did he have? What did he do to the game or to the teams around to make them better, right? When it matters the most, regular season wise, that's a different. But I'm saying in the playoffs, did he ever elevate his game and take over a series or take over or have one of those like iconic moments? I don't think so, right? And again, this is hockey is a team sport. You can have, again, 98 guys in the history of the NHL have hit 1,000 points, right? So a lot of guys have had a lot of hollow stats. A lot of guys have had a lot of, seasons or careers where they put up big numbers, but it doesn't mean anything. I think John Tavares just falls into that realm where he put up a whole lot of numbers, played a lot of seasons, longevity, but he never truly made an impact. And I think when you look back at when his career started and how he came into the league, kind of is a disappointment.
I would say, I mean, he's a really good player, a really good, consistent player. I wouldn't say he's great. I agree with you on certain points. I don't think he should be stripped of the C. That's not happening. He hasn't been that bad of a captain. I'm
Well, I
not
think
sure
he should
what
relinquish
your
it.
expectations of a captain are. I get what you're saying. There are other captains out there who do a lot more. He's very quiet. We don't know what he says in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want him to perform better. But what I really hold against him, and it's kind of unfair because he didn't pay himself. The Leafs paid him that 11
Yeah.
million cap hit every year, which makes him the 7th highest paid player in the league, which is crazy. So I was looking at some stats, and I know we try and go beyond the stats here, but the stats speak volumes sometimes. And over the past 6 seasons, Tavares is 24th in points in the NHL. And for a guy who makes 11 million a year, I know he's not the most prolific player, but that's just not good enough. I mean, you look at some of the players that are ahead of him, you're going to love this one. JT Miller, Mark Scheifele, Braden Point, Kyle Connor, Mika Zibanejad, Johnny Gaudreau, Barkov, right? I think players, and tell me if I'm wrong, players that you'd expect John Tavares to be better than and be probably more productive than. That's not the case. And I think he was brought here, obviously, to be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, be a strong presence in that locker room. He came in when Matthews and Nylander and Marner were really young, so he's helping those guys along as well. But more so, I thought he came in to help them get over this playoff hump. And what? Okay, they've won one playoff round since he's been here. He scored the Game 6 winner last year to send the Leafs to the second round. But if you're looking at playoff points per game in the Tavares era, and I got this from The Athletic, out of the core four, and I said it again, out of Nylander, Matthews, Marner, and Tavares, he's last with less than a point per game in the playoffs. And for a guy that's making $11 million, just not good enough. But I feel like at the same time, you look at the other side of the hand, you got to give him his props. I mean, the guy's about to hit 1,000 points. You know, less than 100 players have done that. So he deserves a ton of credit, but I don't necessarily think he's lived up to his end of the bargain when it comes to his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not yet, anyway. He's only 33 years old.
Albert, he's never had a 50-goal season. I think his career has 47. He's never touched 90 points at all, right? So, again, longevity, playing at a point per game pace, pretty much. That's a very good NHL career, right? Is it was he ever one of the throughout John Tavares' career, would you ever have said he's a top 5 or top 7 guy in the NHL? Right?
No.
Maybe during a current period when he was in Long Island, but for an extended period of time, John Tavares really has never been, one of the elite of elite in the NHL. And like you mentioned, he's getting paid the 7th most amount of money on per annually, and he doesn't produce at that level. So again, great career, but when you're getting paid that much money, like you said, it should match up, especially when guys who are making a couple million less than you keep on out producing you consecutively, not only in the regular season, but also in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, look at some of the names below him in terms of salary and just right. Johnny Huberdeau, who's kind of dropped off, but he's been a good player. Carey Price, I think his price tag is probably well deserved. Jack Eichel's now got a cup. Kopitar, stud. Barkov, stud. Sagan's got a cup. And then you start looking at Goudreau and Zach Werenski, and you're like, oh, okay, those guys shouldn't deserve to be paid that much either. So I really don't want to say disappointing career, because he hasn't had a disappointing career. I think maybe I agree with you in the terms that his expectations were sky high, like almost like I don't want to say Crosby, but maybe
it was though.
You think so? No, Crosby was coming in as like the next best thing, the next Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, but
I think where they're on par in terms of expectations is you'd expect Tavares maybe to have 1 or 2 cups by now, and he has 0.
I think when you look back at Tavares, I remember that World Junior Tournament in Ottawa. I forget if it was 2009 or 2010, one of those years where that he dominated that tournament. Now again, it's the World Juniors, but
World Juniors,
it put him on the pedestal. And he was the guy in coming out of junior hockey as the next one, right? And I think he didn't live up to those. Again, it's hard to live up to those expectations, right? Only guys like McDavid, Crosby, Bedard, and maybe like Lindros have lived up to that. But he just never. He was never the guy in the NHL. He was never the elite superstar in that group. He was a very good all-star level player, which is still a very good career, but he never took it to that 6th gear. You know what I'm saying? Like where he was like, there's 5 guys in the league. I'm one of the 5 guys in the league. That type of thing.
Right. Would you look back at his Leafs career as so far as a failure?
Yeah, because he's the reason the Leafs have not won a Stanley Cup.
He's the reason.
The Leafs have not a Stanley Cup or not even playoff success. The Leafs have not had a greater amount of playoff success because of the John Tavares contract. That hamstrung them so much. Like I said,
he didn't pay himself though.
Again, but
you know what I'm saying?
I understand, but he didn't take his game to the next level to prove that he was worth that $11 million.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I hold it against him.
Yeah, I agree with you. He hasn't held up his end of the bargain in terms of what he needs to do in the playoffs. Regular season, fine. I mean, you're going to get your points. You're playing with some of the best players in the world on that team. You're going to get your points. Right. But in the playoffs is where it matters, and he's not performing. So we're going to have to wait and see. If they make the playoffs this year, which is expected, it's another chance for John Tavares to try and shine.